everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm coming at you with a new video today. I know I've been gone for quite some time, but I promise I am back. And I have 4 new dinner ideas for you. 3 are homemade. One is technically a jarred pasta with some box sauce. Or, no, jarred sauce with some box pasta, but it's okay, we have those days. So the first thing I am making is this white chicken chili. I just started by boiling 3 chicken breasts and some chicken broth. And once that temp done, which is 165, I made sure to check with a meat thermometer. I just threw it in my KitchenAid bowl and I let my KitchenAid paddle shred the chicken. That's a really neat hack for shredding super hot chicken, is to just throw it in your stand mixer. And then once that was done, I just turned the heat down to medium. I added in a can of black beans, a can of corn, and in place of Rotel, because I didn't have any, I added in a can of diced tomatoes and a can of mild green chilies. And then once that was done, I just stirred it all together, and I added in a block of cream cheese. This wasn't quite the entire block. I think I had 6 ounces, whereas a normal cream cheese block is about 8. I had used some for a previous recipe, but if I had the whole block, I would have used the whole block. Next up, I seasoned it. I made sure to add in a good amount of chili powder, cumin, onion powder, oregano, and garlic powder. And I just measured with my heart. I don't really do teaspoon or tablespoon measurements for spices. I just add in a little at a time, and then I taste it and I go from there, because you can always add spice, but you cannot take it away. So that is what I did. And then after this was done, I just added the chicken back in and stirred it all to combine and let the chicken warm back up, and it was done. This was probably my favorite meal from this video. I made sure and topped it with sour cream, avocado, and cheese. And if I had tortilla chips, I would have used those, but I didn't have any, sadly. Next up is a recipe that I have done before and a recipe that I have never once tried in my life. That is baked mac and cheese and ham and cheese sliders. Now, I've done the ham and cheese sliders before, but I have never once attempted baked mac and cheese, so you're going to see exactly how that goes. First off, I just tried to cut my slider buns in half. I am horrible with this and ended up leaving a giant hole in the bottom, as you can see. And then once I figured out how to get them off that bottom piece and into my casserole dish, I laid them down, and then I started going in with my meat and my cheese. I used honey ham because I don't prefer Black Forest ham, and I used some slices of Swiss cheese. I had a pound of each, and I just kept layering until there was no more left. And once that was done, I put the top on, and then I put it in my 350-degree oven for 10 minutes while I made the mixture that goes on top of it, which was just a stick of butter, some mustard, and some everything but the bagel seasoning, as you can see. I, of course, again, didn't measure, but I'd say I used maybe like 2 tablespoons of mustard. I'm really not sure. And then I just used some salt, of course, even though this did have salt in the bagel seasoning. I kind of wish I had used more because it was good, but you could tell it just needed a little something else. So next time I'm definitely going to use more bagel seasoning and more salt. And then I just mixed it together, and once the rolls were done after that 10 minutes, I just applied it with a brush, covered them with foil, and let them cook for 40 minutes at 350. Next, we're moving on to our baked mac and cheese. I started with a roux, so I just melted down 1 tablespoon of butter, and then because I don't use all-purpose flour, I actually grind my own flour. I used a hard white wheat, which is just a type of wheat berry that you can grind, and I just added flour in until it looked good, until it looked thick enough for a roux, and then I realized that I was making a pound of pasta. I was not making a half dish, I was making a whole dish, so I realized I would need more roux. So I went back, added another stick of butter and some more flour, and just cooked that down until it got rid of the flour taste, until the flour taste had cooked out. And once that had happened, I started adding in my heavy cream and my milk. I just added until it looked the texture and consistency I wanted. I have no clue how much I added. I just poured. And then once I was done with the milk, I added in half of my cheese that I had shredded in my food processor. I used sharp cheddar, Gouda or Gouda, I think is how you're supposed to say it, and Colby Jack. And this, it turned out to be an epic fail because I completely forgot that I do not like sharp cheddar cheese. I don't like the aftertaste of it, and that was all I could taste in this dish was sharp cheddar. So if I hadn't added the sharp cheddar, it would have been good, but just for next time, I need to remind myself to not add the sharp cheddar. And then by the time my roux was done, my noodles had been done. I boiled them in chicken broth and then drained them and added my cheese sauce. Now I used fusilli pasta, and I wish I had used cavatappi because the fusilli were, or fusilli, they were just a little too small to be able to hold on to the sauce good, and so they broke apart really easily. And at this point, I was kind of freaking out about the amount of sauce that had been added to the noodles because it looked like they were drowning, but I told myself, just have faith, it's all going to work out, and the extra sauce is going to bake out. So once I was done with that, I let it sit for a minute or so, and then I added it to my greased casserole dish. You want to make sure and grease it. And while I was doing that, I was just toasting up some breadcrumbs on the stove, and that's where I messed up with this. I completely forgot to put on my extra cheese before the breadcrumbs, so by the time I had added the breadcrumbs, I immediately remembered that I forgot the extra cheese, so I just had to make it work. I kind of tried to scrape off the breadcrumbs and put the cheese down and then put the breadcrumbs back on top of the cheese, but it did not work out the way my brain told me it was going to. So the next time I make this recipe, I'm definitely going to have to remember, like, come on, put the cheese on first, and then you can put the breadcrumbs on, and it'll be nice and crispy. But even without the breadcrumbs on top, with them kind of mixed in on that top layer, it was still good. You could still tell there were breadcrumbs on it. So I wasn't that mad about it, but I was still, like, highly irritated with myself. Like, come on now. And then I just put it in a 350-degree oven along with my sliders. I put it in the last 10 minutes of the sliders because it only needs to cook for 10 minutes. And then once it was done, I took it all out and I let it rest for 10 minutes before I scooped it into it. You want to make sure it rests. At least that's what the recipe said. And I failed on the mac and cheese, and these were kind of a fail as well. They were more domed at the top and in the center than they were on the sides, so all that cheese ended up leaking out onto the bottom of the casserole dish, and it made it super hard to be able to cut through to know where the bottom was, because of course I messed up on the cutting as well earlier. But all in all, this was a super good dinner. Like, I enjoyed the sliders. I didn't mind the mustard taste. You could barely tell it was there. And I would have enjoyed the mac and cheese more had I not used sharp cheddar. But yeah, you can kind of tell how much of a fail this entire meal is just by the presentation. So next time I do this, I need to definitely remind myself, like, come on, Thea, do better. And then this night, I was just super tired, so I just ended up boiling a box of penne noodles, and I put on a jarred sauce. I try and stay away from tomatoes just because they're inflammatory, but this night I needed an easy meal, so that's what I ended up doing. And that's okay to have nights where you just do easy meals. Like, that is 100% okay. For the last meal, I made chicken noodle soup, so I just diced up one onion, and then I diced up 4 carrots, and I added that to a pot with some avocado oil and sauteed those until the onions were translucent. And while the onions were sauteing, I was getting my chicken ready. I had 3 chicken breasts. Normally I use 2, but I decided like, okay, I want this to be a little more chickeny and a little more meaty than it was the last time I made it. So I used 3 this time, and that was the perfect number. I'm definitely going to start using 3 the next time I make it. But once the onions were completely cooked through and translucent, I went ahead and added that chicken, and then I added in 4 or 5 cups of chicken broth. I can't remember how much I used this time. I think it was 4. And I just cooked the chicken until it was done. And while the chicken was cooking, I started on my egg noodles. I made my egg noodles from scratch using using wheat that I ground myself, but you can definitely use packaged flour to make egg noodles, or you can just not make the egg noodles at all and instead use packaged egg noodles, and it'll be fine. It'll turn out the exact same, but I personally think it tastes better with homemade pasta instead of store-bought, so that's what I do. Once the chicken was done, I ended up putting it in my mixing bowl, and I shredded it just like I did with my white chicken chili earlier in the video. And then you can see here I used with my homemade pasta, I put it in little clumps. I didn't do it all at once because I didn't want it to be a big clump at the bottom of the pan. And then I immediately stirred it as soon as those hit the water, so that way they weren't all sticking to the bottom of it. And after 3 minutes, they were done. Fresh pasta takes a lot less longer to cook than dry pasta, so you really want to check and make sure and keep an eye on it if you do make the fresh noodles. But once they were done, I cut the heat, I added in my chicken, and I stirred it, and then it was done. Normally you want to let it sit for a few minutes, but my family was hungry, so as soon as it was done, I just bowled it up, threw in some ice cubes with my kids' food, and had I been thinking, I would have made rolls as well, but I just wasn't thinking this day. I just wanted to get dinner on the table. If you have those days, you understand. But that was the last video that was the last recipe from this video. I can't talk today. So I hope you guys found inspiration to make your own meals. I hope you found meals that you like. And I hope you liked the video. If you did, you can definitely click the like button. And if you want to see more content from me, you can hit the subscribe button. It is totally free. It doesn't cost anything. You can do it if you want. You don't have to. I'm just saying I would do it. But I'm going to let you guys go now. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching.